I took my husband's friend to the train station, but he didn't want to go YouTube. https://www.youtube.com/watch?v=kxoajt6wmw. Transcript. It started as a simple favor, just a quick ride to the train station. That's all it was supposed to be. My husband's friend Ethan had stayed the weekend with us after a business event nearby, and I was just being polite, hospitable. But what happened during that short drive changed the way I looked at everything and the way he looked at me. Well, that look has stayed with me since. Before we dive into the full story, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. I love seeing all the places this story reaches. Okay, let me take you back. It was a Monday morning, one of those overcast days where the sky can't decide whether to rain or just brood. I was in the kitchen, still in my robe, pouring myself a second cup of coffee when Ethan walked in, suitcase in hand, jacket neatly folded over his arm. He looked neat, polished in that effortlessly confident way some men carry without trying too hard. Salt and pepper hair, a subtle smile, dark jeans that fit a little too well for a man his age. Train's at 10:45, he said, glancing at the clock on the wall. I'll grab my keys, I replied. Should only take about 15 minutes to get there. My husband had left early for a meeting, so it was just the two of us. The ride wasn't meant to be anything more than a courtesy. I'd known Ethan for years. He and my husband had gone to college together. He'd always been polite, reserved, a bit mysterious, but never once had I looked at him the way I would during that car ride. We pulled out of the driveway, and for the first few minutes we made small talk about the weekend, the food, the wine we'd had last night. Nothing heavy, nothing out of place, but something was different. His voice was softer than usual. His eyes didn't drift to his phone or the road signs. They stayed on me longer than they should have. You know, he said suddenly, I always liked your laugh. I glanced over, caught off guard. My laugh? Yeah, it's warm, genuine. You don't hear that a lot these days. I smiled, a little flustered. Well, thank you. That's sweet of you. Silence followed, but it wasn't awkward. It was charged, like the air right before a summer storm. He shifted slightly in his seat, facing me a little more. I hope I'm not overstepping, he said. But you seem different lately. Different how? Lighter, he said. Brighter, like you've let go of something heavy. I swallowed, my hands tightening slightly on the steering wheel. It's been a tough couple of years, I admitted. Getting older, kids moving out, my husband always working. I guess I'm trying to find myself again, whatever that means at 62. He nodded slowly. You're more than you think you are, you know. His words hung in the space between us, soft but undeniable. We reached the train station early. I pulled into the drop-off zone, expecting him to unbuckle and hop out like everyone does, but he didn't. Ethan stayed in his seat, hands resting on his thighs, eyes fixed on mine. I don't want to go, he said quietly. I blinked. What? I don't want to get on that train. Not yet. I stared at him, unsure of what to say. This wasn't a man being careless. This wasn't a man looking for a fling or flirting for sport. There was something real in his voice, a weight, a pull. You don't have to go just yet, I heard myself say, heart pounding. We've got time. Let's grab a coffee. There's a place around the corner. His shoulders relaxed, he nodded. I'd like that. We drove in silence to the café. Not the tense kind, but the kind that feels like everything is just about to begin. I could feel his eyes on me again as I parked, and I realized I didn't mind it. In fact, I welcomed it. Inside, we sat across from each other at a small corner table. The café was quiet, soft jazz playing in the background, the scent of cinnamon and espresso in the air. He leaned forward, resting his arms on the table, fingers brushing his cup. I wasn't lying, he said. I've always noticed you, even when I shouldn't have. I stared at him, heartbeat loud in my ears. Ethan, you don't have to say anything, he said, cutting in gently. I just needed you to know. Before I get on that train, before I walk away again. I looked down at my cup, my reflection rippling in the dark surface. I felt seen. For the first time in a long time, I felt like more than a wife, more than someone's mother or someone's hostess. I felt like a woman again. And in that moment, I knew this was more than just a ride to the train station. This was a crossing, a shift. A door cracked open that neither of us had expected, but both of us noticed. When I looked up at him again, I smiled. Maybe, I said softly. You don't have to walk away just yet. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We both knew something had changed. The coffee had gone cold between us, untouched. But neither of us noticed. That quiet cafe on the corner, with its mismatched chairs and warm golden light, felt like a little pocket outside of time. I don't know how long we sat there, looking at each other, speaking in half-formed sentences, hesitant but open. Ethan reached for his cup, finally took a sip, then winced. Cold. I chuckled. We got distracted. I guess I wasn't really here for the coffee. There was that pause again. Not awkward, just heavy with things we weren't sure we should say out loud. I glanced at the clock behind the counter. Your train, I said quietly. He leaned back. There's another one in 2 hours. I checked. Of course he did. He wasn't ready to go. And if I was being honest with myself, I wasn't ready to let him. We stepped outside and the sun had started to break through the clouds, casting a soft warmth over the sidewalk. The breeze lifted my hair slightly, and I tucked it behind my ear without thinking. Ethan was watching me again. I could feel it. You want to take a walk? I asked. There's a park just a few blocks over. Yeah, he said gently. I'd like that. We walked in silence at first. Not the kind where you're avoiding anything, but the kind that makes space for thoughts to settle. The park was nearly empty. A few joggers, a mother pushing a stroller, a man reading on a bench. Peaceful. We strolled slowly, not really following a path, just moving together. It's strange, I said after a while, how life starts to feel like it's passing you by when you're not paying attention. One day you're 30 and making plans, the next you're 62 and wondering what happened to the woman you used to be. Ethan looked over, brow furrowed, kind but intent. She's still here. I see her. I stopped walking. I hadn't expected to feel that, that something inside me could respond so quickly. That one sentence could brush against something I thought was long buried. I turned toward him, heart thudding in my chest. You don't even know who I am anymore, Ethan. He stepped a little closer. I know enough. I've watched you for years. Not in a weird way. Don't worry, he said with a soft grin, trying to ease the tension. But I noticed how you carry yourself. How you always make everyone comfortable, even when you're exhausted. How you laugh at things other people miss. How you look out the window a little too long when no one's watching. I didn't know what to say. No one had spoken to me like that in decades, maybe. He went on. Your husband, he's a good man. I'm not here to cross a line. But you are, I said quietly. Aren't you? He didn't answer right away, just looked down at the grass. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe the lion was always closer than I thought. We sat on a bench near a small fountain. The sound of the water made it easier to talk, like it could carry away the weight of our words. You ever feel like you've been holding your breath for years? I asked. He nodded. Every day I felt something shift inside me. A quiet sadness, but also relief, like someone had finally said out loud what I'd been afraid to admit. We weren't being reckless. We weren't chasing something foolish. We were two people who had been quietly starving for connection, and we'd stumbled into a moment of clarity. He turned slightly, looking at me, not with lust, not with pressure, but with deep sincerity. I'm not asking for anything, you know? Not a promise, not a secret. I want you to remember what it feels like to be seen. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes, completely unexpected. You make it easy to forget the years, I whispered. And you make it hard to leave, he replied. The breeze picked up, sending a swirl of leaves across the grass. I looked down at our hands, his resting beside mine on the bench. So close, so still. I didn't move away in that moment. It wasn't about right or wrong. It wasn't about betrayal or fantasy. It was about being present. Two people whose lives had been filled with duty now given this brief, quiet gift of recognition. Eventually we got up, walked back to the car. The air between us felt warmer now, but calmer. No need for grand declarations, just an understanding. We got in, drove in silence. Back at the station, he picked up his bag slowly. I expected him to just say goodbye and go, but instead he turned toward me again. I don't know what this was, he said, but thank you for it. Me neither, I said. But I'm glad you didn't catch the first train. He leaned in. Not a kiss, just a press of his forehead to mine. Gentle, lasting only a moment. Then he stepped out and I watched him go. But my heart, it stayed sitting there with me. still catching up to what had just happened. The house felt different when I got back. Quieter than usual, but not in the peaceful Sunday afternoon kind of way. It was the kind of quiet that settles in after something big has happened. When your body is home, your mind is still somewhere else, retracing every word, every look, every breath that seemed to carry new weight. I sat in the car for a minute before going inside. The seat still warm from where Ethan had been just an hour ago. His cologne, subtle earthy, lingered faintly in the air. I closed my eyes. That moment at the train station, his forehead resting against mine. It wasn't romantic in the traditional sense, but it was more intimate than anything I'd felt in a long time. I eventually stepped inside and was greeted by the familiar creak of the hallway floorboards. The morning light had shifted now, casting golden strips across the hardwood. I placed my keys in the bowl by the door and paused at the mirror in the hallway. I looked different. Not dramatically so, but there was something in my expression I hadn't seen in years. A softness, a kind of glow maybe. I wasn't wearing makeup. My hair was still wind-blown from the walk in the park, but I looked alive. And that realization hit me harder than I expected. I busied myself with chores trying to shake the feeling. Laundry, dishes, wiping the counter even though it wasn't dirty. But nothing could distract me from the echo of his words, the sincerity in his voice. I want you to remember what it feels like to be seen. By the time my husband came home that evening, I had tucked those feelings neatly away. Or at least I thought I had. He walked in with his usual briefcase, dropped it by the chair, loosened his tie. "Hey," he said. "How was your day?" "Quiet," I answered, drove Ethan to the station. "Then just errands." He nodded. "Yeah," he texted. Said, "Thanks for the ride." Said, "You two had coffee." I felt my stomach tighten. Not from guilt. Exactly. But from the realization that this moment right now was the part of life I had become too used to, the surface level, the polite questions and even politer answers. Yeah, there was time before the train. I said it was nice. He didn't press further. Just moved into the kitchen to heat up leftovers. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling while he slept beside me. I listened to the sound of the ceiling fan clicking softly with each rotation. I thought about the park. The way the sunlight had made Ethan's eyes look a little softer. I thought about the way my heart had reacted, how it hadn't felt that full, that alive in years. And I wondered, was it wrong to feel something so deeply? If it reminded me that I was still capable of feeling it all. The days that followed were strangely ordinary. I went about my routines, groceries, calls with the kids, book club, but everything felt slightly off-kilter. Like I was living inside a snow globe someone had shaken. And I was waiting for the flakes to settle. Then on Thursday afternoon my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello. Hi, it's me." His voice low, calm, familiar now in a way it hadn't been just a week ago. "Ethan," I said, stepping into the other room. Shutting the door gently behind me. "I hope it's okay that I call," he said. I wasn't sure if I should, but I've been thinking about that morning, about everything. I sat on the edge of the bed. My heart began to race again the way it had in the car. "I have too," I admitted. I keep telling myself it was just a moment, a passing thing, but it wasn't. At least not for me. I exhaled slowly. It wasn't for me either. There was a long pause, no rush to fill it. Just the soft hum of the connection between us. "I'm coming back into town next week," he said. "Another meeting, just one night. But I thought maybe we could meet just to talk." My chest tightened, not from fear. From the sheer weight of wanting something I hadn't let myself want in so long. "Ethan," I said carefully, "this can't be something careless. Not at our age, not with the lives we have." "I know," he said. "I don't want reckless. I just want real, whatever that looks like." I stared at the wall across from me, tracing the outline of the picture frame there. A photo of my husband and me from 15 years ago. We looked happy, and we were, but happiness isn't always enough. Sometimes it fades quietly, replaced by habit and silence. "Okay," I say finally, "we can meet just to talk." He didn't thank me. He didn't gush. He just breathed a soft "all right." We hung up and I sat there for a long time. It wasn't about starting something forbidden. It wasn't about running away or falling into something foolish. It was about the quiet possibility that maybe, just maybe, I still had parts of myself left to rediscover. And maybe he was part of that rediscovery. Not as a secret, but as a mirror, one I hadn't looked into for a very, very long time. The following Tuesday arrived quietly, as if it knew not to make a fuss, the kind of day that slips in unnoticed gray skies, soft wind, no fanfare. My husband had left early again, conference calls, back-to-back meetings, the usual rhythm of a life that ran parallel to mine more than with it. Ethan texted just after noon. Asterisk at the same café. No rush. I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't like me to hesitate. I wasn't someone who played in between, who straddled the lines of emotion and obligation. But something about that day felt different. Like it wasn't just a meeting. It was a moment asking to be felt fully. Honestly, no hiding. I changed twice before settling on a soft blue sweater and dark jeans. Simple but clean. A little makeup, not too much, enough to remind myself that I still noticed how I looked. When I walked into the cafe, he was already there. Same table, same gentle posture. He looked up and his face softened instantly. The kind of look that isn't performed. Just is. "Hey," he said, standing. "Hey," I returned, my voice a little quieter than I expected. We sat. This time no small talk, no need for the weather or idle chatter. The air was already full of everything we hadn't said yet. I didn't expect to feel this way. I started about you. About myself. He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. I think we both forgot how capable we were of feeling anything this deeply. The words settled in, not heavy, just real. "I've spent years convincing myself that comfort was enough," I said. That being a good wife, a good mother, keeping the house in order, that all of it was fulfillment. And maybe it is, but something about that day with you. I paused, breathing carefully. It woke up something in me I thought was long gone. Ethan reached for his cup but didn't drink. "You've been asleep for a long time. I could see it. The way you smiled at people but didn't light up. The way you laughed politely but never deeply. I noticed." His words weren't meant to hurt. And they didn't. They simply revealed the truth I had tried to ignore. "I didn't come here to start something," I said quietly but firmly. "I'm not looking to blow up my life." "I know," he said. "And I'm not here to ask for more than what you can give." We both went quiet again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it was the most honest silence I'd sat in for years. "I needed to see you again," he finally said. To know I didn't imagine what happened. To know that the connection we shared wasn't just a passing feeling. "It wasn't imagined," I said, meeting his gaze. "And it wasn't just a passing feeling." The weight of that truth landed between us. I reached for my cup this time, took a slow sip, then placed it back down. "There's a version of this where we cross a line," I said. "Where we run towards something that feels good in the moment but leaves destruction behind, and that's not what I want." "Me neither," he replied gently. "But I think," I paused, collecting the emotion rising in my throat. "I think what you gave me was a kind of permission to see myself again, to remember the woman I was before she became invisible in her own home." Ethan's eyes glistened just slightly. Not tears, just understanding. "I've been carrying that same feeling," he said. "Different circumstances, but the same loneliness. You reminded me what it's like to sit across from someone and feel known. Really known." I reached across the table and rested my hand on his. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't bleeding anywhere. It was a gesture of gratitude, of quiet truth. "You don't need to stay," I said. "But I'm glad you came back." He turned his hand to hold mine just for a second, then let go. "I think I needed this more than I realized," he said. We stood slowly. Neither of us rushed to leave. But there was no clinging, no ache. Just a shared understanding that what we had wasn't about future promises. It was about the power of being truly seen even for a moment. As we stepped outside, the wind carried the last of the gray clouds away. The sky opened a little brighter. Ethan walked me to my car and we stood there in the open parking lot. The world moving quietly around us. "Take care of yourself," I said. "You too," he replied. He leaned in and kissed my cheek. Not possessive, not suggestive, just warm, kind. I watched him walk away, and this time my heart didn't stay behind. It came with me, fuller, stronger, clearer than it had been in years. Not because I had fallen in love with someone new, but because in the space of one unexpected morning, I had remembered how to fall back in love with the woman I used to be. And that changed everything.